Watch your head on this rope. Oh, it's a bit misty down here actually, isn't it?
You will expect to see darkness, mud, extremely hard work, passion, tradition, and a goal to win what was historically one of the most precious minerals in the Forest of Dean.
It's a little bit like any exploration. I sort of related in a way to the Australian gold diggers. You know, why do they do it? Why do they do it? Because ultimately you might find that big nugget. And that is the same really with this coal mine, because we are really scratching around where people have worked for hundreds of years. So we're looking for that elusive bit of coal that's been left, that pocket of coal that's worth £500,000, you know, that is what drives people, I think.
So a free miner is any male person, and is only male by virtue of statute, born within the 100 of St Briavels, over the age of 21, and has worked a year and a day underground. And if you meet that criteria, you can approach the Deputy Gaveler for registration as a free miner. Once you're in this book, you're in the annals of history. And that's why people do it. The biggest threat at the moment is birthright. And not enough people being born within the 100. Registrations have dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. But Wallsend Gale is one of the last working few traditional coal mines in the Dean.
I went underground at the age of 12. And I used to look in the entrance and see all the broken timbers and the mud and the water, and I was horrified. And I was always scared that my father would go in there one day and not come out. And that always niggled me a bit. But anyway, as I grew up to the age of probably 13 or 14, I became interested in holes in the ground. The tradition of free mining goes back to the reign of Edward I, and the miners were, besides working coal, they did the odd bit of poaching on the side, I think, and so they were pretty handy with a bow and arrow. So when it came to building an army to fight the Scots, they called on the miners to do it. And in payment for that, well, I suppose as a reward for that, they were granted the free mining rights, which we have today.
The forest split up into gales like a big jigsaw puzzle. This is one of those jigsaw pieces. These are depth measurements basically, as they're all inclines. So they get deeper as you're coming down into the middle of the mineral basin. And all of these workings will have been long closed. It was all timber set, it was all set in timber, but very, very close centres. Notoriously difficult to work the culvert hide half seam to any extent without the ground falling in around you. You could literally advance 1, maybe 2 feet at a time before the ground was falling in around your ears. And what you end up with is basically a drawing like that, indicating that pretty much everything has been scraped out from there.
Myself and Phil are the two oldest working miners. We'll both be 75 this year, so that does mean we've got 150 years between us. Going mining 3 times a week, as I do at the moment, that is actually, touch wood, what is actually keeping us fit. There's actually enough coal in this area to keep me and all my friends busy for the next 500 years. Because although it's elusive, it's there somewhere, but it takes a lot of finding. I've never really tried to work out how much coal we've dug out, but all I do know is we've dug an awful lot of tunnels.
This is actually where we're going. So this is the plan of Wallsend Colliery. The entrance that we will be going in is here, so it sort of goes in at an angle down to the bottom of the drift, and then we will be heading off in that direction.
What depth is that?
We'll be about at that point maybe 30 metres under the ground. It sort of goes into a hillside, so it gets progressively deeper as you're going in.
Okay.
Well, Forestry England is very important to us because effectively they manage the areas where we work the coal. The deputy gaveler, who just happens to be my son at the moment, he is the person that is basically deemed responsible for controlling the free miners in the forestry, make sure they don't get out of hand and start pinching stuff they shouldn't be pinching. We try not to make a mess. It's difficult in an industrial situation like us. You'll see there's quite a lot of rubbish around here, but in general it's not that bad really. You know, we do try and keep it a bit tidy.
I grew up in a free mining family. My father, Mike, is a free miner, active free miner. And from the age of 11, I worked with him in the coal mines. And that's my grandfather. The picture says 73 to 94, he held the office, but he actually held the office before then. But there he is, there's Albert. Yeah.
A lot of people say to me, well, why didn't you become, or want to become deputy gaveler? In a way, I suppose I ducked out. But that never really appealed to me, to be honest. But having my son as deputy gaveler, we do have differences of opinion. And I'm working on it. The boundary of the 100 of St Briavels is not a definitive line on a map. Getting the deputy gaveler to agree to that's another matter.
The deputy gaveler had to have something to work with, and there was a formal plan drawn up which sits in the office.
The only thing that was defined in law was the tradition of the boundary, and Wood's laws of the Forest of Dean clearly state that there is no actual boundary.
Yeah, but James Wood, author of Wood's laws, it was one man's interpretation of the law, and that has been challenged on numerous occasions. So I think this argument will go on forever and a day.
This argument will continue into the next century, I'm sure. Oh, good morning.
How are we doing? All right?
I guess you're the man from the ministry, yeah?
Something like that.
Have you got your dirty clothes somewhere?
They're back in the car.
Yeah,
so
you
we'll
sure?
Get those sorted. Yeah, you're going to lend me a hat or something
I'll
other
lend
than
you a hat,
beanie?
but you've got to remember it's awfully wet down there and you're going to need knee pads. Well, mining in the Forest of Dean's been going on in some sort of fashion since the Roman period. This mine, Wall's End, originally employed 200 people around about 1880. And worked with horses underground. It would have been a very different landscape because it was an industrial area, so we wouldn't have been surrounded by the trees that you see here now. This would have all been bare. There would have been a railway line down here. There would have been a row of trucks, railway wagons all lined up there. There would have been a chimney in the distance with the power in the steam engines for the shaft. And here we are now, you know, perhaps 200 years later, still carrying on that tradition. It's just a couple of good friends working together to earn a living. But nevertheless, we're trying to keep this tradition of mining in the forest going, really. Well, this is my mining clothes, this is. Well, apart from my shoes.
So talk us through what we're going to be doing today.
We're going to be going down and understanding what the mine is about, see what we're up to. You're going to look at some coal in situ and maybe dig out maybe 6 strugs of coal which will fill the cart, which will be a bit of a bonus if we do that. So.
Sounds very productive.
Yeah.
So the age of this mine itself, what have you got a rough idea?
Nobody knows the actual age of the mine. There was a map drawn in about 1835, and on that map it says Old Shaft.
Right. Okay. So it was old in 18.
So yeah, so that might give you a bit of an idea of it. Some of the kit that we're using is actually their original kit. Not much of it, but some of it. We do find things. We do find things underground that were left from the old miners. You know, I think the most interesting thing was an oil lamp we found, wasn't it, Phil? But that's it, look. It's a cart lamp.
Aladdin's lamp.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We
So
found that.
there would have been a wick.
There
at
would have
the
been a
top.
wick there, yeah.
Filled with oil, and it's flat on one side, so it will stay still at the side of the cart.
Ah, very smart. So what sort of age do you think that is?
That's probably from about 1860.
1860.
It would have used whale oil. So
How long have you two been working on this particular mine?
this particular mine we started working about 10 years ago, but it's been quite difficult really because we're trying to open up about half a mile of old level, which has been collapsed for for more than 100 years. So, and it's been quite troublesome really.
Sounds hard.
You'll see.
I feel like we're ready to go and explore. I don't know what it is.
That's it.
Perfect.
This is like a Norman castle where there's always one odd step so that it would catch intruders out, and if they were wearing armour they would trip on the step and fall down with a big clank.
Aha.
If you need a stick, there's sticks there. I always use a stick down this slope. This main tunnel went down originally back in 1900, but believe it or not, that barrier there where the tunnel begins there is actually the boundary of another gale.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so theoretically, if we go past that, we're trespassing, really.
So is that why it's been blocked off? In the first
No, it's just fallen in.
Okay.
Is that a regular occurrence, things fall in?
Well, you know, Gloucestershire does have a habit of reclaiming itself. A mine is a bit like a pressure vessel under the sea. The weight is not necessarily always coming from the top. If you can imagine it, the actual weight and the pressure underground is totally engulfs the tunnel that you dig. So sometimes you'll notice that you'll see some broken timbers and things in places, and that will be mostly due in here to floor pressure. So it's upward pressure rather than downward pressure.
Heave.
Yeah.
And what's causing that heave?
The pressure will release in the direction of least resistance.
Okay.
You create the void, and that's
And then
where
that's when it goes up. Okay. That makes sense. That's fascinating.
Right, off we go then.
It must be quite easy to get disorientated or lost at times.
We never really get disorientated. Well, you might, and first-time downers might get a bit disorientated. I mean, I could tell you exactly where that tunnel should be under the ground, under the hillside, but no, it can be disorientating. But you get used to it.
It's amazing, really, because I class myself as a landscape archaeologist, so when I'm above ground I'll be looking at lumps and bumps to understand archaeology, but it's interesting to think that you're doing the same but underground, so looking at all the clues to...
This is quite often what people can't appreciate is this 3D aspect.
Yeah.
When you're digging underground, it is a massive 3D jigsaw, really. And three-dimensional jigsaws are quite tricky things, really.
Yeah.
Free mining is an integral part of the unique fabric of the Forest of Dean. The trees that cover the Forest of Dean are almost a reflection of the minerals underneath it. You cannot work one without interfering with the other.
Coal was trees once upon a time, basically. People don't realise how old some of these coal fields are. We'll call them fields. They were woodlands 430 million years ago. There were long periods of time when this area was forested over. Evolution took over, those forests died off. They turned into peat bogs, which eventually got compressed by earth movements, and that's how the coal was formed. There's fossils all the way through here, isn't there?
Yeah, so typically in these carboniferous formations you'll get fossils found, usually root type fossils, but you can see up in the roof here we've got virtually a whole tree from one side to the other, set in very thin laminar pieces of coal.
And how do you know it's a tree? Sorry, stupid question.
It looks like a tree primarily, but you can see by the texture of the stone that it's the impression of the actual tree surface.
What kind of age do you think that would...
Ooh, I don't know. How old are these trees, Phil? 175 million years, something like that.
And are you still using traditional methods like a pickaxe?
Yeah, very muchly. Picks, shovels, and rudimentary pneumatic equipment as well.
Yeah, pneumatic tools and non-explosive explosives.
How does that work?
Well, it's a classification, you know. Munitions have an explosive rate, or rate of burn they call it. But if you can imagine that was a solid face of rock, I put 2 holes in there with a 50-gram charge in each hole, and that removed all of that rock in one go. Boom. It's very much a misnomer to think that it's not an explosive. Although it's called non-X, I can assure you, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. You have to be very careful when you're on the edge of old work like this, because those rocks could shear off and fall down.
There's an element of, because you're looking for coal that they've left behind.
Basically, yes.
So what's that feeling when you reveal a seam that you weren't expecting? Or?
Well, that is ecstasy, really, isn't it? You know, that is like finding a piece of gold or picking up a £10 note in the street. You know, because obviously that is the aim of mining, is to find coal. It's not really just digging tunnels for the sake of digging tunnels. But all of this is good usable coal. Mightn't look like it, but it is. You can see it doesn't actually take much to dig quite a lot of coal. What we'll have to do is we'll have to put some more timber up in here before going too much further.
The mining of the coal is the really easy bit.
It's getting to it.
That's about it for that one. It's probably about 10 kilos.
Another one of them. You've got technically a bag of coal. What's a bag of coal cost these days?
10 quid.
10 quid.
There you go, there's another one.
That's an easy antenna then.
There you are, £10 note.
Yeah, so how long will it take? 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get in?
Not very long.
10 minutes to get a bag of coal.
Yeah, my drive to work's longer than that.
That is the rock which is underlying the coal. I mean, eventually you will get it. It's not exactly sandstone, but it's bloody hard.
That's the official term, it's bloody hard. I mean, what's funny is that you wouldn't have thought anything actually worked here when you first turned up. Yeah, you think, oh, there's some rails.
Yeah, when that cars is full and it goes over the brow up there, there's 900 pounds of pull required to bring it over the top. So. Yeah, you'll notice how much cooler it is underground now when you come out.
Does anybody else want to sing Hi Ho?
It's a birthright, and that is really what makes you important in a way, I suppose, you know, special. But you still have to be born within the 100 of St Briavels, so because of the lack of maternity facilities, unless you're born basically at home now, then it's very difficult to become a free miner, even if you're keenly interested. But it only needs one. You know, as long as there's one person still there. We've got some young people that are interested, we're bringing them on. Some of them aren't particularly young, some of them have just recently retired, so they're in their 60s. But to us, that's young, you know, they're still strong. I've got one grandson who lives down in Somerset now, and one strange grandson who may resurface at some time. And you never know, they might, that little sparkle, that, like I said, that elusive nugget of black gold might come into their eyes and think, well, I need to do a bit of this.
Break off? Apparently you're too old to push this cart along, Phil.
It's hard. There's a lot of resistance.
Very proud to be a forester, very proud to be born son of a free miner. And my future hope is that it does not die out during my office. That's the best that I can hope for.
I'll keep going down here as long as I'm fit enough to go down. because if you stop doing it, then you lapse into this kind of comfy settee mode of watching Gogglebox, and then I think the end is nigh.
So glad I wore my office shoes for this.
You wore your what?
Office shoes.
Oh, is that your office shoes you got on? Yeah, it's difficult to believe that this was the main road to Blakeney.
These subterranean buildings.
This is actually incredible, isn't it? The fact that people lived here. And you can see there's a bread oven there.
It's just weird. I used to come and play up here as a kid.
It's incredible. Well, I think it is. I don't know. Maybe that was a bloody old pile of stones, like.
What do you reckon then, Lawrence? Labour of love, shall we say?
Yeah.
But the amount of work to put this in place.
Yeah.
It is a dying skill, but it's, you know, it's a skill that needs to be passed on.
So you're not on a tourist trip here, you're on an actual...
Yeah, you can go down show mines and, you know, down the likes of Big Pit. It doesn't really represent the hardship of mining in the forest.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point.
People walk around museums, look at cases, and it doesn't mean anything.
No, it's got to have
the fact
context.
that people are actually still doing it.
So does that make you a museum relic?
It just makes him one of the crazes. Just one of the crazes.